I would argue that we've not seen a situation as dangerous as the one we're facing now across the region since at least 1973.
On October the 6th, we learned that the Syrians and the Egyptians had launched a surprise attack on Israel. I say surprise. It was no surprise to me that our intelligence didn't discover it because they're really not that good. But I was very surprised that the Israelis didn't because they have the best intelligence in the world, and they were totally surprised. We got word that the Egyptians and the Syrians were having great success on the battlefield and that it was going to be necessary, at least it was requested by Golda Meir, that we resupply the Israelis for the tank losses and others that they had and airplane losses. I had to bring the Defense Department in line and have them go forward on a massive airlift to Israel, which was the biggest airlift, incidentally, since the Berlin airlift, and turned out to be much bigger in terms of tonnage that was delivered. There were 85 Soviet ships in the Mediterranean. That on those ships, among other things, were helicopters and landing barges, and that 3 Soviet airborne divisions, 50,000 men, had been placed on alert. We could not allow the Soviet Union to intervene unilaterally there, because if they had, we would have been forced to intervene. And I knew that under the circumstances we could not stand by and let the Soviet Union move in, and that would risk a world war. So under the circumstances, therefore, I approved an alert of our forces, nuclear and conventional. A couple of days after that, Brezhnev backed down, and finally the ceasefire went into place. This is all by now the 26th of October, only 20 days after the Yom Kippur War began. November 1st, the tide had changed by that time. The ceasefire was in place. Golda Meir, shortly after that, flew into Washington, thanked me very generously for the support we had given. And November the 7th, after a time of elapsing of 6 years, Egypt and the United States normalized their relations, and Henry Kissinger started on his very successful shuttle trip. Summarizing it all, I think it's very important to note here 2 things. One, this is not a demonstration of détente failing but succeeding. Unless I had had the personal relationship with Brezhnev, unless he knew from what I had said to him at Camp David that we would not stand by unless I had developed that kind of relation, and unless he was looking forward to another summit the next year, I do not think that we would have been successful in keeping them out. That helped. The second point is that we handled the whole situation in a way that saved Israel, but at the same time did not totally alienate the Egyptians, because the Israelis, by the time the ceasefire occurred, had all totally surrounded the Egyptian Third Army, which was on the other side of the Suez Canal. So they held back, and the Egyptians were appreciative of that. And so as a result, this was one of those wars which ended with peace without victory. And peace without victory is virtually the only kind of peace you can have that will survive in that kind of a situation. You can have too great a victory. If it is too great, what happens is you plant the seeds for another war.